Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano, and this is the Bad News Network. According to NASA, a large asteroid that is on its way to destroy the Earth does not exist. Scientists have launched a fake asteroid threat to determine how Earth's planetary defense teams will react. The fake asteroid is 8 years away, which doesn't give the Earth a lot of time to prepare. Now, I'm not an expert, but hear me out. We take an elite group of miners with absolutely no experience in either science or space, we put them in a spaceship, and we launch them towards the asteroid. Once they land, they will drill deep into the asteroid's core, placing a large explosive device inside that, when detonated, will break that thing up into tiny pieces that will burn up inside the Earth's atmosphere. Let's just hope that that charge can be blown up remotely and that we don't need to leave a miner behind to sacrifice himself. No miners left behind. A beluga whale has been accused of being a Russian operative. And we would have never known about this elite espionage program if it wasn't for some crafty Norwegian fishermen. The Norwegians knew something was fishy when the beluga whale continued to approach them, trying to discard a harness that had been attached to it. The harness read, "Equipment of St. Petersburg," but in Russian. Russian research scientists responded to the inquiry saying it was probably the Navy messing around. Messing around, huh? What was the purpose of that harness? Some believe it allowed the majestic creatures to be ridden into battle. Others say it was for a mounted camera. Still others wonder whether the whale was colluding with Trump. I guess we'll never know for sure. Oh well. There was a shooting at UNCC this week, and while we could easily talk about the gunman and his motives, I'd much prefer to talk about the heroes that saved the day. Riley Howell, an ROTC student at the school, tackled the gunman, allowing others to escape while he was fatally shot. Then Cooper Creech, who is a current student and also a medic in the National Guard, saw a classmate of his drenched in blood immediately after the gunshots and sprinted to him, pulling him behind cover. Creech was quoted as saying, "I grabbed him and brought him behind cover at one of the buildings across from Kennedy. I laid him in the grass and took his shirt off and just went into medic mode." Whenever bad things happen, it's very easy to focus on the evil act itself, but I much prefer to look at the people doing good, the people that were putting themselves into harm's way and trying to do the right thing. Riley and Cooper, thank you for setting the standard for courage. British scientists discovered cocaine in shrimp this week after testing a multitude of river shrimp. Dr. Leon Barron from King's College London said he expected this from urban shrimp, but was very surprised to find it in both suburban and rural shrimp. He didn't expect them to party quite that hard. It's a fast life for shrimp, and after all, shrimping ain't easy. To double check his findings, Dr. Barron ate a bunch of shrimp off the backsides of strippers. Study confirmed, he said later from the top of a tall oak tree, though the doctor has no recollection of how he and Chastity arrived at that location. Tensions have mounted in Venezuela as violence has erupted between pro and anti-government factions. A new interim leader, Juan Guaido, has been recognized by over 50 countries, including the United States and the UK, but that hasn't changed anything on the ground. Guaido and opposition leaders have rallied Venezuelans to set forth a series of escalating strikes to force Maduro and his regime out. One woman was killed and many more injured when Maduro-backed security teams ran armored vehicles into the protesters, while simultaneously accusing Russia and China of being involved in escalating the problem. Russia and Congresswoman Omar disagree. They both believe that the United States is behind all this mess. But don't let this clear testing of the Monroe Doctrine on the part of Russia distract you from the fact that the Atlanta Falcons blew a 28-3 lead against the New England Patriots and that socialism never works. The Democratic-led House Judiciary Committee has asked Attorney General William Barr to testify before them. Barr said no. Amazon is coming under fire after numerous reports of dehumanizing treatment towards their employees have surfaced. Their optimization process is done entirely by an automated system that tracks how long it takes an employee to complete a task. Any time spent not doing the task, say going to the bathroom, is charted as a time-off task and goes against an employee's rating. If the program determines that there has been too much time-off task, then that employee is recycled to a retraining program or fired. If a good employee accomplishes their task faster than the allotted time, then the schedule is updated to a faster schedule. Essentially, no matter how hard you work, the system will attempt to crush you. This isn't the Skynet we envision with gun-toting Terminators and explosions. No, this is far more insidious. This is a passive-aggressive Italian mom system that will eventually erode your self-esteem because nothing is ever good enough, is it? is it? I need a minute. That was just a joke, Mom. It was just to make people laugh. That's all it was. This next part has spoilers from last Sunday's Game of Thrones, The Battle of Winterfell. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend stop watching. Great episode. Loved all of it. Except the military strategy appears to have come out of a Cracker Jack box. Where to begin? Ah, yes. They have no forward observers, even though they have an accumulation of the greatest military men and women in this entire world, a couple of dragons that can just fly around, and oh, that's right, Bran, who can turn himself into a bunch of ravens and fly forward and check things out risk-free. So what do they do instead? After standing around for a long period of time in the dark, they just kind of choose an arbitrary moment to have the Dothraki just charge into the darkness while occasionally lobbing a few fireballs in front of them, and that's it. I think I counted like 12 balls of fire lobbed in front of the cavalry. Look, I get that you might not want to have people out there, so here's a crazy idea instead. Light a bunch of things on fire in the distance so that when the zombie horde shows up, you can see them. And when you see them, that is the time to use your trebuchets and start lobbing balls of fire at them. And here's another wild idea. I know it's crazy, I'm just spitballing here, but what if we put obstacles out there so that when the zombie horde came, they got slowed down into maybe an area where we had already practiced lobbing those balls of fire, and then we just lob a bunch of them and kill a bunch of those zombie Death Knight people before they even get close to us. Nah, you know what? Instead, just leave a giant open plain completely unobstructed and launch your best archers on horseback into the abyss. The Dothraki would have honestly been more valuable dismounted, standing behind the infantry, shooting at the dead as they approached, than just hurling into the nether. They were completely and totally wasted despite their swords being on fire. Thanks a lot, Melisandre, that was a huge help. Back to the artillery. Who puts artillery in front of infantry? What genius had that plan? So the greatest casualty-producing weapons, other than the dragons, get wiped out in the first 5 minutes of battle, leaving the infantry one-on-one with the dead. Anyway, back to the infantry. There were no obstacles other than a tiny moat that they were supposed to kind of retreat back through if necessary. They could have built a massive and elaborate set of obstacles that created a funnel that ended in like a 10-man front, so at no time could the dead go around and they'd just be running into this wall of men that could just cycle back and forth from the front while dragon fire rained down on them and those giant balls of fire kept hitting them. But no! Way better to just keep it a fair fight, dead mono, and just rush each other on a plane. And now back to the dragons. The whole plan was that they had 2 dragons and the Night King only had 1. So they were going to hold back until the Night King showed himself, then they were going to leap out and grab the Night King, wipe him out, end the whole thing like that. But that got scrapped like 5 seconds into the fight when they sacrificed the Dothraki on the altar of stupidity, and as Brian Shute would say, Daenerys couldn't hold her mud, rushed out there, and threw the whole plan away. Even then, one dragon could have been blasting baddies while the other kind of kept security looking for the other dragon, but instead, the 2 dragons just kind of spent most of the episode flying around in the clouds. But let's leave the fight for a moment. Where are we going to put our women and children as we face an army that can resurrect the dead? Ah yes, I know! Where we bury our dead! What could possibly go wrong? Also, if Bran gets caught by the Night King, the world as we know it ends. The Age of Man is over. What should we do to protect him? I know, Greyjoy and like 6 archers. Sounds good. That should be sufficient. What about maybe grabbing a couple of the Dothraki to throw into the mix? Nah, let's just charge them into the void. Anyway, back to the fight. As their god-awful defenses break down faster than it takes a private to buy a $40,000 Mustang, there's only one thing between them and certain defeat: a 2-foot moat. But it's not just a 2-foot moat. It also has some sticks, kind of pointing out of it towards the enemy. The idea here was that the enemy would hit the moat, get stuck on the sticks, then they'd light it on fire and take them all out. Not a bad idea, if the moat was big enough that a 6-year-old with a running start couldn't leap over it. Anyway, the baddies clear the moat and the good guys run inside the castle where they probably should have been hanging out the whole time anyway, and this is where the last stand's really gonna start. I'm sure they have lots of oil they can dump down on anyone trying to breach the castle, and some heavy rocks to crush people, and a well-manned group of people all around the top of the castle so that this thing can't easily be breached. Nope, none of that. The army of the dead is literally marching to Winterfell in order to end humanity as we know it, and Winterfell isn't even equipped with the basic defenses of the time. Probably they thought that their master plan was going to stop all this before they even hit the castle walls. So that all falls apart. So then it's down to Jon Snow, but he fails and is about to die again when his queen dragon aunt lover shows up to save him, but then for some god-known reason lands her dragon, and then she's about to die, and then Sir Friendzone shows up to save her, all while Sansa and the imp are hand-holding somewhere, and then Sir Friendzone dies. To be totally honest, they deserve to die and the Night King should have won. It took the only competent Stark to sneak up behind him and stab him in what can only be described as a Tom Brady to Edelman catch it under the leg of the other guy moment. Hashtag Arya, hashtag GOAT. Moving along. Thousands of teachers across North and South Carolina have spent a day in protest to discuss teacher wages, penalties for speaking out on public issues, and the general fact that it is very hard to get any allocated resources in order to help their job. This is a complex matter, and I'd love to actually bring some teachers onto the show to discuss it. But as we look at the quality of American education, here are some things to consider. First, what should an educator make? It's impossible to compare a teaching job side by side with most jobs because teachers do receive a significant amount of time off. On the other hand, however, the product of what they produce has an impact on all of our society. Second, is it too hard to remove bad teachers? Third, should there be a manner to compensate exceptional teachers rather than just pay teachers on a time and grade basis? Fourth, do we spend too many resources on special needs children? The knee-jerk reaction is, of course not. But ask any educator behind closed doors and you'll hear them complain about how many resources go to a very small population of students while less and less time is spent on the top students or even the average students. That, of course, begs the question, what is the primary goal of public education? If you're a teacher and you want to come on and talk about this stuff, I'd love to have you. Leave a note in the comments and I'll reach out. A recent video seems to show ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi still alive. It was originally thought that al-Baghdadi was killed around the 2014-2015 timeframe, as no videos of him have surfaced since then. Many believe the intent of the video was to show the strength of ISIS. However, you might want to Baghdadi that up because America's about to kill you. Police in Chicago had to shut down an entire street over what they saw was a suspicious object. Upon further inspection, the suspicious object was a dented can of Chef Boyardee taped to some skateboard wheels with a smiley face drawn on it. What the hell kind of terrorist organization would take a delicious childhood treat like that and turn it into an IED? I mean, what kind of sinister organization is so cold-hearted that... What's that? Okay. Turns out, not an IED, but actually a research project from a DePaul University student that had run upstairs to check on something. When he came back down, there were already 10 police officers blocking the street. When the police realized what had happened, they opened the can in front of the kid and ate it. He got an F on the project, but he gets a Chef Boyardee for effort. In space news, we going back to the moon, baby! USA! 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 2024 is the year that NASA has planned for the next manned lunar mission. This will be the first manned mission since 1972. NASA's first step is to build a lunar gateway that will allow people to move freely from the Earth to the Moon. This would go in stages, with the first step being to place a lunar gateway that would orbit around the Moon and allow for easier transport from the Earth to the Moon. The end goal is to have an easy access to the lunar surface and to be able to set up a base of operations for future missions elsewhere. Honestly, it's about time. NASA is about the only thing the government does well that also inspires everyone, and this is our best chance at becoming a multi-planet species with a long-term goal of surviving. And finally, this week a man in Florida was arrested at a library for drunken disorderly conduct. When police arrived at the scene, they thought he had been drinking and asked his name. The man replied that he was international fugitive Jason Bourne. Seriously. As the police attempted to arrest Mr. Bourne, he quickly dispatched them with a series of sweet roundhouse kicks. He then took their guns and changed into one of their outfits so he was indistinguishable from the other officers. He then climbed on top of the library and jumped building to building, fleeing his captors. As more police began to congregate on the scene, Bourne knew that he was in a rough spot, so he leapt from the building, caught a pole, slid down, grabbed a guy off a motorcycle, threw him to the ground, jumped onto the motorcycle, and fled. His current location is unknown. Just kidding. Out of shape 45-year-old John William Chapman was easily arrested by the police despite his drunken belief that he was in fact Jason Bourne. God bless you, Florida man. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano, and this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and you only have one more week before we start to spoil Endgame.